So I know I keep talking about this, but now with Ranger Suarez off the board, the Orioles have an obvious answer as to who they need to get at starting pitcher before they can really call this offseason a full-on success because they've been busy and meeting other needs, including adding some starting pitchers, or I say adding some. We brought two back and traded for one. But we're still looking for that top end starting pitcher. And as we have seen, the Orioles have been linked to Framber Valdez almost this whole entire offseason. And I mean, I don't know at this point. Like they need to pounce now, or else it's just not gonna be satisfying whoever else they decide to go with. Because I saw an article after Framber Valdez, yeah, the pitching kind of, for starters, kind of gets a little like they're not terrible options, but they're not really who you would want. Like, I don't think the Orioles fallback if they don't get Valdez would be signing Zach Gallen. I think they would go more the trade route for like a Freddie Peralta or a Mackenzie Gore. But the thing is, I don't want another rental trade. I mean, this is already pointing towards how 2024 was when we were waiting so anxiously to see what the Orioles would do in the rotation. And like a week before spring training started, we traded for Corbin Burns, and that ended up being a rental. And he was really good with us too. So it's not like that trade for us ended up not meaning anything, because then you look at the two guys we gave up in that trade, uh, Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. Neither one of them is really doing much. I mean, Joey Ortiz is the starting shortstop for the Brewers now, but he's not necessarily a superstar. And DL Hall at this point is on the outside looking in with the Brewers. So even for a rental, the Orioles didn't have to give up too much when you look at it now. But yeah, I just don't want another rental because Freddie Peralta, Mackenzie Gore, not that I think they're going to get like Dylan Cease money in the offseason. They'll probably get something close to what Ranger Suarez and Framber Valdez are going to get, even though there's probably going to be an MLB lockout next season. Um, it's just it's so frustrating because the Orioles have their guy there. You've been linked to him, and heck, you know that Ranger Suarez got 5 years, 130 million from Boston. So now you need to counteract that with either five for 135 or five for 140 for Framber Valdez here. Now that you know where the market is set, because I know a lot of people are saying, and I believe it, that the New York Mets are the only team that we're really fighting for Framber Valdez with. Although I did hear that the Yankees are kind of checking in, but at this point, I don't really know a ton of what the Yankees are doing. Their biggest offseason acquisition so far this year has been Ryan Weathers. But it's kind of like the Shane Baz trade for them. Weathers does have a high upside, but he's not necessarily, what you would call a humongous acquisition. But the Orioles need to do what they did when they didn't get Schwarber, because you remember they offered Schwarber the 5 for 150, and it's not that Schwarber thought that was less than what he wanted. He just said, "All right, well, I'll take that to the Phillies, and if they match it, I'll sign there. If they don't match it, I'll sign here." They ended up matching. He went there. So when we signed Alonso, we said 5 for 155, and we upped the ante, and Alonso signed it. That's what we need to do with Valdez, knowing that Suarez got 5 for 130. Say, all right, 5 for 135 or 5 for 140. And if he doesn't take that, then I really don't know what to take at that point in time, because I don't know if I would go above 140. Like, I really thought that Framber Valdez was going to be the one getting the money that Dylan Cease got, but it looks more and more like he's obviously going to make more than Ranger Suarez and what I think. But one thing that makes me think the Yankees, or not the Yankees, the Orioles are going to land Suarez over the Mets is because, well, there's two things now. The Mets are very hesitant going over 5 years for a guy at 30 years old. That's why they didn't offer Pete Alonso a contract. And that's the thing, is like they didn't want to go 5 years with Pete Alonso, who's 31 years old. So why would they want to go 4 or 5 years with Framber Valdez, a guy who is 32 years old? It just wouldn't make sense. And as a Mets fan, I'd be satisfied, but I'd be confused to be like, wait a minute, you gave an older guy a contract you said you didn't want to give out to a guy that was 30 or older. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Plus, they just got Bo Bichette on a 3-year deal worth, it was like 126 million or something. I don't necessarily remember. But yeah, so now that the Mets have gotten Bo Bichette and spent money there, the question lies on how much are they really going to be willing to offer Framber Valdez now, as it's like they can outbid us because of who their owner is. But again, are they going to be willing to go more than 3 years? And how much are they willing to dish out since they just paid Bo Bichette and they keep going with these short term deals? Because keep in mind, they got Polanco 2 years, 40 mil. They got Luke Weaver. I'm probably missing somebody else. They traded for Semien and whatnot. And now they go out and get Bo Bichette, which I don't understand that one. I don't really know where Bichette's going to play because you got Semien at second and Lindor at short, and Bichette has only ever played second and short. I don't know if he's good enough defensively to play third base, which is where Brett Beatty is. So you're just going to have him DH. I mean, he's a good hitter, so I guess that could be the case there. But it's just one of those things where the Orioles now have to take advantage of that, and the Mets kind of pivoting because I think the Mets losing out on Kyle Tucker, they were kind of like, okay, let's pivot here. And I guess they didn't find Cody Bellinger to be an intriguing enough option. So they decided to go with the probably next best free agent hitter that wasn't Cody Bellinger in Kyle Tucker on a 3-year deal. So, yeah, I mean, because then there's this article here on Fox Sports that says Mets, Orioles, three MLB free agent fits for former Astros left-handed pitcher Framber Valdez. So again, I still think the Mets are in on Framber. The question now lies just how much are they willing to offer him because again I think the years and the money are going to matter with Framber Valdez, and I don't know, maybe the Mets at this point are just going to kind of lowball him to a sense because he's 32, so I can tell you they're not going to offer him more than 3 years in the contract. But who knows? I mean, Kyle Tucker just took 4 years with the Dodgers and opt out after three. Bichette only got 3 years, so I think really the only like three main like big hitters that got contracts over 5 years this year or 5 years or more were Pete Alonso and Schwarber, who got 5 years for similar deals, and I believe Josh Naylor, what was it, a 6 or 7 year extension with the Mariners? Those are the only three hitters that have gotten 5 years or more on a contract. But those guys are still in the middle of their prime, so they make sense in a way. With pitchers, it's always hard to tell and always hard to pinpoint because I think Suarez took this long to sign because his velocity has been dipping. But since he's been so consistent and he has, pitches that don't need velocity to make, it work, he's been able to be one of the more successful pitchers. And with Valdez, I mean, there was that whole thing with Cesar Salazar last year and his last month, particularly being bad, that kind of have swayed people off. But we're talking about a guy who just had a 3.66 ERA, and that's considered a down year for him. He has the most innings pitched of any pitcher since 2022, or it might be the second most. I know him and Logan Webb are like very, very close in that category. Because I said it before, if the Orioles were to sign Ranger Suarez, I'd be okay with that. But because of the injury history, I don't know if like Ranger Suarez would have been the right guy to go with. Valdez, you know what you're going to get: 180 to 200 innings a year. He's going to make pretty much every start out there outside of maybe one or two, and he's going to be effective when he does it. He's a left-handed pitcher, doesn't give up a ton of home runs, which when you play at Camden Yards, that's an excellent thing. He's a 60% ground ball pitcher. He's 32 years old and really has shown no signs of slowing down. So it's like the Orioles have it in their lap here as to who they need to get, and yet they continue to just kind of be slow with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I do like what the Orioles just did internationally, as they have spent the most money on international free agents that they ever have. So that was pretty cool to see there. And I don't think, again, that will stop us from signing Framber Valdez if we do, because, we didn't like give these guys like a bunch of bucks, but, we spent a lot of money. There's this article here that says, two AL East teams are reportedly still in on Framber Valdez. The Orioles, Mets, Giants. They met with the free agent, which we know that. Yeah, the Yankees and Orioles. It says Yankees and Orioles are the two AL East teams interested, and the Yankees could be interesting too because they haven't really spent a ton this year. And I know that their rotation is pretty decent right now, but because Garrett Cole is injured and the age that he's at, they might, and he'll be out till May. And I think also guys like, Clark Schmidt and Carlos Rodon are also dealing with injuries. So I can see why the Yankees all of a sudden are going, okay, let's look at Framber Valdez, because really the guys that they got, it's like Ryan Weathers when healthy is going to be good for the Yankees, and then they also have Max Fried still, who's going to be the ace to begin the year with the injuries there, and Cam Schlitter, who was really good as a rookie. But when you look at the other options, kind of like, okay, maybe the Yankees could get one more guy, but the Yankees are also one of those teams to me that if they don't get Framber Valdez, I think they would be willing to get a Zach Gallen or a Chris Bassett or even a Nick Martinez on, some sort of a shorter deal, because they know that, like, hey, these pitchers, Rodon and Cole, are going to be out for about mid-May. So we don't necessarily need guys that are going to come in and, pitch the whole season. We just need guys who have experience and can give us depth while those guys are out, because the Yankees pitching depth is a little weird. Like, it's not terrible, but it's also not the best thing in the world. So yeah, there's that. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, the Orioles actually got to keep Jackenzie Noel. He actually got outrighted to AAA, so that's pretty cool. We didn't just get him, and then I made that post, and then we designate him for assignment. So Jackenzie Noel stays in the Orioles organization, getting to AAA. I do like that move. That's kind of like under the radar, because I know people are going to look at his career stats, his batting average being low, but the man he's got power and he's got potential if he can just fix some things. So I'm glad we're able to keep him, and he's going to AAA, so that way he can just be a depth piece there, because he's had, a couple big moments in the MLB already. So I do like that. And we signed Sam Huff, catcher, to a minor league deal yesterday. I kind of figured after we lost Drew Romo, after designating him for assignment, I figured the Orioles would want to keep a guy with some experience around, because with Rushman and Basayo kind of playing catcher, first base, DH, you might want to have an emergency guy there that can come in and start when you need him to. And I think Sam Huff could definitely be that guy. Oh, the Phillies re-signed JT Realmuto. I don't know if that's breaking news. This is 40 minutes ago, but I kind of figured that. So they get two of their big bats back this off season. But yeah, I'm not necessarily seeing too much about Valdez. I'm still hearing that about the Orioles, obviously being in on him. But my question is, when's it going to strike? Because I thought, what was it? When did Ranger Suarez sign? Was it Tuesday, Wednesday? It was one of those 2 days. I thought when he signed, I said the next day, I'm like, Valdez is going to be off the board, whether it's the Mets or the Orioles. I said, now that Ranger Suarez has I thought Tatsuya Imai set the pitcher's market at 3 for 63, but Ranger Suarez has officially set it for Framber Valdez, and whatever Valdez gets, it's either going to be 5 or 10 million more than Ranger Suarez gets. And I don't know. I thought so, but I've been wrong a lot this off season when it comes to, oh, these players are going to go here, this player's going to sign for this, that, and the other. It's just been so weird. Now I am glad that the MLB offseason is heating up a little bit more. We have seen that, I think, ever since the Kyle Tucker kind of deal and whatever. We've seen more moves. I know the Reds just made a move for Josh Lowe yesterday, so the Rays just continue to make trades. And the Reds needed an outfield bat, so that gives them one. So yeah, things are definitely starting to heat up in that category. I'm just waiting for the Orioles now, because the last time the Orioles made like a full significant move was signing Zach Eflin, which was like 2.5 weeks ago. It was a while ago. I think it was like right at the beginning of the new year in January. I think that's where it was. Plus, I guess the last like bigger move the Orioles have made was Shane Baz, and that was over a month ago as well. And even I said after we got Baz and we got Eflin, I said I don't think this means the Orioles are done. Whether they make another trade for a starter, a top of the line starter, or get either Suarez or Valdez, the Orioles are going to, make the move. I think they just want to get some depth in there, because last year I think they realized like, oh, we didn't have as big a pitching depth as we thought. And don't get me wrong, our rotation looks improved now. It definitely does. But I think what's separating us from the other teams, when you look at all the other teams in the AL East outside of maybe the Rays, but they do have Shane McClanahan coming back. So he's a, ace when he's out there and healthy. The Red Sox, they have Garrett Crochet. The Yankees have Max Fried. And when it's not Fried, they have Cole. And the same thing with the Red Sox. If it's not Crochet, then they have Suarez and they got Gray. And, the Blue Jays, they got Cease, they got Gosman, and the Rays, they got McClanahan coming back. They got some solid, other young guys there as well. The Orioles, we got our guys too, but the question is, we don't have that solidified ace like all the other teams in the AL East do. That's what's separating us from them right now in a division that's tough, in a division where, who knows, maybe every team could finish with a winning record. I mean, there's that possibility because remember, the Tampa Bay Rays tend to sneak up on you sometimes. And now with the resurgence of the Blue Jays, the Orioles having the offseason, they had the Red Sox seemingly doing some things, and the Yankees being weirdly quiet for the most part. Heck, the Yankees might even be a fourth place team in the AL East this year. But the Orioles have to make this move. That they have to. Once they make this move, if they do nothing else until or before spring training starts, I will be satisfied with it because you got two great, not great hitters. Pete Alonso's great. Taylor Ward's good. That's 74 home runs added to a lineup that needed that. You got couple of bullpen arms in Helsley and Kittredge, which the bullpen needed some help. You did add to your rotation by getting Boz and bringing back Eflin and Suarez. That's great and all. You're bringing depth in everywhere else. Now it's time to go and get that big name starter and finally spend big money on a starting pitcher because the Orioles have not gone more than 4 years, 57 million on a starting pitcher. Now I know the last time we signed two pitchers to deals like that, the 4 for 50 and the 4 for 57 were Ubaldo Jimenez and Alex Cobb, and those didn't necessarily work out. But Alex Cobb and Ubaldo Jimenez also weren't like two of the top three pitchers on the market. They were like up there, but they weren't like, oh, this is the best guy out there. This is the second best guy out there. They were like fourth, fifth, or sixth. And, Jimenez had his ups and downs with Alex Cobb. I think it was just, actually, I really don't know with Alex Cobb because he was pretty consistent before that. But, the Orioles took the risk and didn't get it. But with Valdez, he's showing no signs of, needing to be scared off. So I say if you sign him, and heck, if you want to sign him to like a 4 or 5 year deal with an opt out after 3 years, if you're really that worried about how he's going to pitch after he's 35, then do that too. I mean, you're in the win now contending window. As long as this isn't like a rental thing, a 1 year thing. That's why I said, as much as I would love to trade for Freddie Peralta or Mackenzie Gore, I don't want another Corbin Burns situation where there's more than likely a possibility that after the season's over, they're going to walk in the off season. Now with us spending a little bit more money this off season, it would give me have me optimistic going into next off season, barring a lockout, that the Orioles would be willing to bring back guys like that and extend them. But I'd rather the Orioles get this now, get Framber Valdez, and have that top of the rotation guy while also having other guys with high upside. Bradish, when healthy, one of the best pitchers in the game, I would dare to say. Trevor Rogers. I'm not saying he's going to repeat what he did last year, but as long as he keeps his ERAs in like the threes, you got yourself a good guy there. You got Shane Boz under control for the next 3 years, and his ERA was only that high because he had an ERA over 5 in what they called the Mickey Mouse ballpark that the Rays had to play in. And no matter what the future is with Dean Kramer or whatever, you got to admit he's been a model of consistency for this team. Has he been great? No, he's pitched like a number 4, number 5 starter, which is basically what he is now. And people forget last year he led the team in starts, innings pitched, and wins. So he's just as valuable to have there too. You still got Tyler Wells, under team control for the next couple of years, and when healthy, he's also pretty good. And I mean, you got Zach Eflin for this year, was a 1 year deal, but nonetheless, the Orioles have their depth. But I would like for some of these guys to stick around past this year. So Peralta and Gore would be great and all, but unless you get an extension done after the trade, then I don't really know. I would at this point, I'm saying for the Orioles, it's Valdez or bust. Valdez or bust. Nothing else would necessarily satisfy me. But at the same point in time, we have to do something. We got to stop sitting around when it comes to starting pitchers. Like, it just amazes me that immediately after Schwarber signed with the Phillies, when they matched our offer, the Orioles were like, all right, go to Pete Alonso. And the next day we just signed him, no problem. And they see what Suarez got, and they're not doing the same exact thing. They're like, all right, we didn't get Suarez, but here's what he got. Let's offer this to Framber Valdez. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that the Orioles haven't done that yet, considering they met with him and he's familiar with Mike Elias. I know he's familiar with, I can't remember the guy in the Mets that Framber Valdez is familiar with, but Valdez is familiar with Elias because Elias was one of the ones that scouted Framber when the Astros signed him from what was it, the Dominican Republic, or drafted him or whatever. Although I looked at an old article, apparently Framber Valdez was actually signed by the Astros as an outfielder before becoming a pitcher. So that was pretty interesting. And considering, too, apparently the Orioles have wanted this guy for a while, because we were supposed to trade Zach Britton to the Astros in 2017 for a package of 4 prospects, one including Framber Valdez. But because of injury concerns on a physical to another one of those prospects, the Orioles backed out of it. And of course, we didn't trade Britton until the next year. So Valdez could have very easily been an Oriole earlier on. And the Orioles, and this was back when Mike Elias was still with the Astros. So the Orioles have wanted Framber Valdez before Mike Elias even got here. It just didn't happen. But now that you have your chance to pounce on him, and you have met with him, and you are familiar with each other, this just seems like the right time to make this move. It really does. Plus, I don't know. I just have that feeling Framber Valdez wants to stay in the American League because that's all he knows. He knows how to pitch against teams like the Yankees and, of course, the Mariners, who, are going to be a really good team, and the Red Sox and all that stuff. He knows how to pitch against those teams because he sees them more often than not. And, of course, like Ranger Suarez, I think the one thing I liked about Valdez and Suarez was their postseason resume is also good. Actually, Valdez is a little better, or Suarez is a little better than Valdez, but Valdez has lost a World Series. He's won a World Series, so he knows both ends of that. Ranger Suarez lost the World Series in 2022 to Framber Valdez, but they both have pitched extremely well in the postseason, and that's another thing I want. I want someone at the top of the rotation that has postseason experience. I'm not talking about like 2, 3, 4 starts. I'm talking about like 10 plus, has been there, done that, has, lifted up a championship trophy, has had disappointment, because I think right now in the rotation, the only ones that have had any postseason experience is Bradish has 1 start. Eflin has, I think, a couple from his time with Philly, or not even a start, but he pitched. And then, of course, he started game 2 of the wild card game in 2024 for us. And then I want to say, no, Boz does not. He was not a part of the 2020 Rays team. He was still in the minor leagues because he didn't debut till 2021. So, and Dean Kramer also has a postseason start. That was in 2023. That didn't go well. So combined, the Orioles only have maybe of their starters, they've pitched in 5 postseason games, 3 of them starts, and none of them have really any World Series experience outside of Zach Eflin, who was on that 2022 Phillies team that, again, lost to Framber Valdez. So Valdez would give you that guy at the top of the rotation, and heading into the postseason that you can count on to go out there game 1 of a series with the experience, knowing, okay, he's seen the ups and downs of the postseason, winning a World Series, losing a World Series. This guy has to be just has to be the guy, because Mackenzie Gore, he doesn't have any postseason experience. He's been stuck on crappy Nationals teams because people were complaining about his win-loss record. I said, yeah, but with pitchers nowadays, you shouldn't necessarily be looking at that. I mean, yeah, if they have like a 3-10 record and ERA of 5.5, you'd be like, okay, yeah, that pitcher's not good. But Mackenzie Gore, I believe, was 5-15, and his ERA was barely over 4 last year. He pitches well. He's just stuck on bad Nationals teams. And with Freddie Peralta, he's been there, done that in the postseason, but I don't think he's had as much success as Valdez or Suarez has. So it's just going to be an interesting situation, because, again, I don't think the Orioles are not going to do anything. I definitely think there's a move brewing coming up. The question is, Are we going to be able to get to Valdez first before, say, the Mets or Yankees do? Two teams that are definitely richer than us, even though, again, we've spent the second most amount of money this offseason. Or are we going to go the trade route like we did in 2024 and wait till the last godforsaken second? Because we went through the same thing with the pitcher market last year where we're like, okay, the Orioles are talking to these guys. There's a possibility. And then Max Free got paid all that money. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's not happening. A Corbin Burns reunion's not happening. That didn't happen. But we waited way too long. And by the time all the good starting pitchers were off the board, we had to settle with a 41-year-old Charlie Morton, which I did like the move at the time. It didn't work out well. And then a 35-year-old Tomoyuki Sugano, who had only ever pitched in Japan and was 35 years old at that point in time and wasn't one of the necessarily, flame throwing Japanese pitchers like a Tatsuya Mi that you would get too excited for. But again, I did like that move as well. It was just one of those ones where I'm like, why are you like that seemed to be the Orioles thing was like, why are we going with these old guys? I mean, when we signed Gibson in 2023, he was what, 35 years old. So there was that. And then last year with Morton and Sugano, it's like, yeah, but why don't you go to some of these, younger guys who you can actually sign to multi-year deals? Because, we haven't signed a starting pitcher to a multi-year deal since the 2018 offseason, which I believe was actually it might have been yeah it was 2018 because it was like in the middle of spring training when we signed Alex Cobb. Outside of that, the last pitch or the only pitcher we've given a multi-year deal to is a reliever, that being Ryan Helsley, 2 years, 28 mil, and that could end up being a 1 year thing because he does have an opt out after this season. But I just think the Orioles haven't been shy about spending money. They put their money where their mouth is, and they weren't BSing when they said we're going to have an active offseason, we're going to have a successful offseason. But now to complete the successful offseason, to officially make this an A plus offseason, because right now I give it an A, but to make it an A plus offseason, get Framber Valdez, and if you do nothing after that before the start of the season, I will be content. Although you could get another bullpen arm or two. I feel like the Orioles are like, if we just get Valdez or just another starting pitcher before the start of spring training, especially one that could come right in and be the number one and number two guy, and Valdez would be the ace right away, then off-season success. This is like the best off-season I've seen the Orioles have ever, and I've been watching baseball for 20 years at this point in time. I was like 8 years old when I started watching baseball. So yeah, and the Orioles have never done this. They've made some, bigger moves before, but nothing like this. And Framber Valdez would definitely you know, make me feel better because I think too people are like, well, it's the clubhouse concerns too, the him being a clubhouse cancer, and I'm like, where is this coming from? Because outside of a few incidences, which I looked it up just in case, I'm like, am I missing something with Fromber? Like outside of calling out his coaching staff last year, which is something that a lot of players have done, and the Cesar Salazar thing, crossing him up, there really hasn't been anything, and there's been nothing about him, clashing with teammates coming out and saying they hate him. Now, somebody could come out and say that, but at the same point in time, I don't think Framber Valdez's problem was with the, players in the clubhouse. I think it was more with the organization, the Astros themselves. And the only other incident I can find with Framber Valdez was he supposedly intentionally threw at who was it was a Rays player after a home run was hit or something. And again, we're acting like he's the first pitcher to do that. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying we're sitting here acting like he's the first pitcher that has ever done that. So, Valdez has, a hot head sometimes, but it hasn't necessarily done too much. Like, we're not talking about like, Bryce Harper or Manny Machado hothead, or someone like a Albert Bell or a John Rocker, or I'm trying to think of more, or like a Jeff Kent, Barry Bonds kind of thing. We're not talking about those kind of clubhouse cancers or hotheads. He's just very competitive. And I get it. Sometimes he does things where you just go, why did you do that? But at the same point in time, it seems like everything gets sorted and settled, and then they move on to the next one. And plus, I don't see him trying to cross up Adley Rushman or Samuel Basayo, because I mean, those guys are, pretty not established, but Basayo's big. Adley Rushman's big enough. He's also a veteran. So I know Adley Rushman would tell him real quickly, like, hey, knock that off. And Samuel Basayo would just kind of, be there like, hey, you want to pick on someone your own size. I am pretty much your own size. So, I don't think Adley or Samuel would let Fromber do that to them. So plus, Cesar Salazar wasn't even like the main catcher for the Astros. That was Yainer Diaz, and I doubt that Framber Valdez does that to Yainer Diaz. I don't see that happening. Like if Diaz was behind the plate that game, I don't know if Framber Valdez does what he did, and that's saying a lot too because it's making me sound like he's targeted Salazar intentionally because he was a guy who's back and forth from majors to AAA, and that could be a problem. But it was one incident out of like the two, maybe three he's had in his career, two involving his team, but nothing, going past he called out his coaching staff for, I think I looked it up. It had something to do with like the way the coaching staff had the Astros defenders shifted, and Valdez ended up giving up one of those like dinky base hits where it probably should have been an out, but because of the shift, it was, you know, a base hit. And Valdez, was just like, why did you call the shift there? It didn't make any sense. And the whole Cesar Salazar thing. But, outside of that, um, he pitches well. He's not one of those innings eaters where he has like an ERA over 4 a lot of the time either. Like we had that with Jordan Lyles. He was an innings eater and he pitched pretty better than I thought he was going to with the Orioles. Won 12 games. He had a 4.42 ERA and pitched, I want to say it was 180 innings that year in 2022. I don't necessarily remember. He's not going to be like a Jordan Lyles inning eater. He's going to come in, he's going to eat innings, he's going to do it effectively. Anywhere between like a 280 ERA to at worst 370, which I'll take that any time of day, especially with the guys in the rotation that we have. People tend to forget that Kyle Bradish, even during the injuries since 2023, has an ERA under 3. And like I said, Trevor Rogers, I'm not saying he's going to come out and do what he did in his 18 starts last year, the 1.81 ERA, but if he keeps up what he's doing and keeps an ERA around 3ish, then you got a pretty good guy there. It's just a matter of getting the guy at the top of the rotation with the experience to even make those guys better than they already are. So we'll see what the deal is there and when exactly Framber Valdez is going to sign, because I feel like it should have happened by now and it hasn't. And we keep hearing all these rumors about how, oh, he's close to signing. He's talking with the Orioles. He's talking with the Mets. That the Yankees are here. They might be a underdog candidate for him, but we just keep hearing the same thing every day, and nothing really happens. But hey, another reason I think a trade is also a possibility for the Orioles is because people don't realize that the trade deadline last year for them was a huge make or break of what they could do this offseason, because they revamped the farm system knowing that, okay, this year's a wash. We're not going to try to trade away, minor league talent to get these guys, and we may or may not make the playoffs. They were smart in selling off the guys they needed to sell off, getting some decent prospects back. And we've already, even some of the guys we drafted, we used in trades already this off season, and we still have some of that. Like with Freddie Peralta, I think you're going to have to give up, a major league ready guy. I think someone like a Dylan Beavers or a Kobe Mayo or even potentially a Ryan Mountcastle, because there's still a possibility that we trade him, could be an option with, more minor league packages. And the same with Mackenzie Gore. You can probably give them Mayo or Mountcastle. I don't necessarily know if they'll want an outfielder because they have a good bit of them already, the Nationals do. But I would even say somewhere in the line you could throw in Cade Povich. I mean, he's not even a prospect anymore, but of the young pitchers the Orioles have that have major league experience, Cade Povich would be the guy that I would say, you probably just want to trade him away because he's had his moments, but 6-17 record with a 5.20 ERA in his career is not necessarily where you want to be with him. But especially if he's going to give you a better starting pitcher in return. So the Orioles do have the trade assets that need to be made. Like I said, I only think there's a few Orioles that I would say are off limits in trades. like obviously Basayo because he signed that 8-year extension before last season ended. I think Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holiday, I think those guys are definitely off limits. Outside of that, it's kind of hard to tell. Like Cowser probably, but at the same point in time, I feel like it would have to be like the right guy, the right trade to be like, all right, we'll get rid of Colton Cowser, sure, why not? And I guess the only other one I would say for the Orioles that might be untradeable, maybe not untradeable, but there's like a 99.9% chance he won't be traded, is Jordan Westberg. There's a small possibility, but my thing is, you get rid of Westberg, who's going to play third base? I know Kobe Mayo, but the thing is, I prefer Kobe Mayo at first base over third base. And then you have like Emmanuel Rivera, who I believe is still on the team, and Jeremiah Jackson. But Jeremiah Jackson should be used more for utility purposes rather than everyday third baseman. So that's one of the reasons I don't think the Orioles would give up Westberg that easily. Whereas with someone like Beavers or Cowser, I think the Orioles would be willing to give up more on because the outfield depth is so just stacked. But I think they would give up Beavers before they would give up Cowser. But again, we'll see. We'll see what the Orioles' decision is because, like I said, it's either sign Framber Valdez or you're looking at the trade market. And the Orioles' options are pretty much wearing thin at this point, with the potential of maybe bringing in Zach Gallen or Chris Bassett. But at the same point in time, I don't know. I want to have a starting pitcher who's really good, who is going to be at the top of the rotation. I want it for more than 1 year. That was the thing that was bugging me with Corbin Burns so much. Was like, he's going to be gone after this year, so it's like I'll enjoy him while we have him, but I'm not going to buy a jersey or anything for him because I know he's just going to be gone. That's the whole reason I bought this thing. I bought a Pete Alonso jersey, Orioles jersey, because he signed a 5-year deal. He's actually going to be here for a while, so he was one of the few free agents in recent memory that the Orioles have signed that I've actually gotten a jersey for because he's going to be here for more than 1 or 2 years. It was worth getting. So, that's why I don't necessarily have a ton of new Orioles jerseys, although I do want to get like a Gunnar Henderson and all that. But jerseys are so expensive nowadays, man. That it was like I remember that city. I had the Cedric Mullins City Connect jersey, and that thing was ridiculously expensive. But thankfully, I got that half off on sale because I got it before Christmas time, so I didn't have to pay full price for that. But yeah. God, I've been at this for almost 40 minutes already. Sometimes I don't even feel like I've been talking that long. I guess it's because I'm not like having a conversation with someone in person. But let's see. Okay, someone left a couple comments. So these were back at the beginning. I think the Yankees need one more. Yeah, I think they meant to say pitcher, not picture. They need one more stunning pitcher. Again, probably starting pitcher. Um, but the Yankees mini trade with the Marlins. Okay, it was on Tuesday. I thought it was. Got a strong rotation. Yankees are strong rotation. 10 starting pitchers. That's a lot. Yeah, but at the same point in time, how many of them are going to be good? Because my concern, well, not my concern, I'm not a Yankees fan. I could give two craps, but Yankees should be concerned with Garrett Cole and how he's going to come back from Tommy John because he will be or is 36 years old. And sometimes that just, at that age, it's not as easy to come back from as, say, if you're like 28, 29, even 30 years old at this point. Rodon, outside of last year being good, that contract has not necessarily been great for them either. And I think guys like Clark Schmidt, Luis Yeel, although good pitchers, are highly overrated than what people are, giving them credit for. I don't think they're that great, but they're good, but they're not that great. So right now for the Yankees, it's like, okay, you got one established pitcher in Max Fried, and then the rest of the rotation is going to be like mismatched, just who's who going in starting pitching. I mean, right now they said Ryan Weathers was the first Yankees acquisition that wasn't technically a re-signing because the other guys, Trent Grisham accepted his qualifying offer. They brought back Paul Blackburn, Ahmed Rosario, and Ryan Yarborough. Those guys were all on the roster already from the Yankees last year, and they're bringing them back. Ryan Weathers was the first guy they actually got this offseason that wasn't on the team. But it's kind of like the Cody Bellinger thing. His dad Ryan Weathers' dad did play for the Yankees at, oh, sorry, I hit my desk at one point in time. So probably a familiarity there and whatnot. Although Ryan Weathers is also coming off an injury. So I don't know necessarily what the Yankees' full plan is there, but they've entered the Framber Valdez sweepstakes, although I don't think that they're as in as the Mets and Orioles are per se. Like I said, I still think Valdez is going to end up a Met or an Oriole. I don't think that that's like in a question at this point, unless some surprise team like the Yankees or somebody else just comes out of nowhere. But yeah, the Mets and Orioles. I mean, the Giants met with Valdez too, but the Giants are very 50-50 of whether they're going to spend a good bit of money or not on a guy because I think they did spend on Adamas and they've spent money on like Robbie Ray and stuff like that. But that they're not one of those teams that's necessarily going to throw money everywhere. They'll do it when they feel it's necessary. But I don't know. But hey, if he goes to San Francisco, he'll be in a pitching ballpark, so it'll definitely help benefit him a little bit. Where as if you go to Baltimore or New York, those are more hitter friendly ballparks. But again, with his ground ball rate, it could be fine. I think that's what the Orioles or Mets need is a guy that keeps the ball on the ground more than 50% of the time, and Valdez definitely does that. Like I keep looking at my phone, and it's weird because I'm not even gonna have this phone in the next couple of days. I got a new phone, and it's coming in either Saturday or Sunday. But I keep looking at my phone just to see if there's any updates because I remember when the Ranger Suarez thing happened, I saw I saw something and then I was like, well, it hasn't necessarily officially been announced yet. We'll see. And then I saw it a couple minutes later. I was like, oh, okay, it's been announced. The Red Sox got Ranger Suarez. So yeah, that's what after Ranger Suarez signed. I said, all right, this is the Orioles now. Framber Valdez, you know what you can offer him, and this is the guy that has to be number one on your list. If not, then I don't know what to tell you. But if this was the Orioles of the past, I would say I'm not confident that he'll sign with us like under 50%. Now, though, with the way the offseason's been and our willingness to actually, show players the money and signing Pete Alonso to a deal like we did, I am now at a point where I'm like, it's 50-50. I mean, obviously Orioles Mets, so 50-50. Like I would have said maybe last year that it's like a 75% Mets, 25% Orioles, but now it's kind of even because the Orioles have actually done what they said that they're going to do and haven't shied away from offering money. I will give Dave Rubenstein that. He said in one of the press conferences when the season ended before the offseason, he said, coming up with this free agency, we don't have a limit as to who we're going to go after with these free agents. We're going to be in on everybody as much as we can. And they haven't lied about it. Obviously, I didn't expect them to go out there and spend willy-nilly on everybody, but I thought, hey, you got one of the top three hitters on the free agent market. That's pretty cool. That usually doesn't really happen with the Orioles nowadays, unless they get them through a trade. And now you have a chance to sign the second or third best pitcher, or maybe some people had him ranked the best pitcher this free agency class this offseason, because Dylan Cease has been long gone since Thanksgiving. And I'm glad we didn't jump on that because that was an overpay. I will say that. The Blue Jays got a little too desperate considering what Ranger Suarez just signed. I feel like Cease didn't need to get 210 million. But now that you don't have to go in the Dylan Cease territory to pay Framber Valdez, you can go more in the Ranger Suarez, and you still probably end up paying Framber Valdez 15 to 20 million less than what you're giving Pete Alonso. I would jump on it. It seems like a no-brainer to me. And I know there's stuff and stipulations that don't make it as easy as it sounds, but if you're the Orioles and you're really serious about this, you need to continue outspending the Yankees and going neck and neck with the Blue Jays and Red Sox this offseason to, and that's the move you got to make. That is the move you got to make. The Red Sox have made multiple moves in the starting rotation. They've done well. They got one of the guys that you wanted. Now it's time to go out and get Framber Valdez and show the Red Sox like, hey, okay, you may have taken one of the guys that we wanted. They might have. I don't even know if the Orioles are higher on Suarez or Valdez. All I know is we've been connected to those two pretty much since the offseason started. Um, and it was like, oh, Orioles are going to get one of these two guys. They seem very interested, and it's been back and forth between Orioles prefer Valdez or Orioles prefer Suarez. But now that Suarez is off the board, there is no preferring. Framber Valdez is right there for your taking, and you need to just go out and get him. Open the checkbook one more time this offseason, and that will conclude an A+ offseason, which is something I never thought I would say with the Orioles, but it has been a really good offseason. And the way it needs to finish, it needs to finish with Framber Valdez. And then you go into spring training, work everything out, and just hopefully head into the season where all your starters aren't necessarily injured, because that was a problem last year with Wells, Bradish, Rodriguez all being hurt at the same exact time. And Bradish and Wells didn't pitch till later in the year, and Grayson didn't pitch at all. He's traded though. We gave up on him because of his he can't stay on the field too much with the injuries. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about this, is that it's the Orioles' opportunity now. And outside of that, if they don't get Framber or whatever they decide to do after that, it'll be cool to see who they decide to go after if it's not Framber. But at the same time, it'll be a little underwhelming because I was expecting them to at least leave with Ranger Suarez or Framber Valdez this offseason, and you still have a chance. One of them's off the board, but the other guy's still there. And compared to what the other guy made, 5 for 130, offer same amount of years to Valdez for either 135 or 140 and see where it goes from there, because the Mets are reluctant to go more than 3 years on a deal. They might be able to outbid you money wise, but at the same point in time, does Valdez want a short-term contract worth more money, or does he want a long-term contract? That way his free agency doesn't come up as quickly again, or maybe he's hoping he can sign somewhere for the rest of his career. That way, by the time his contract does end, he can just be like, all right, I'm done, I'm retiring. Because if you give him a 5-year deal, he'll be 37 by the end of it. So at that point in time, depending on how he's still pitching, he could be like, I don't want to deal with free agency again, I'm retiring. So I don't know. I just feel like Valdez is going to want more years rather than less years, more money. But his Scott Boras is his agent, so I don't know. I really don't know. But it could be one of those things too. Maybe he does a Blake Snell, signs like a 3-year deal with an opt out after one, and then goes out and gets him more money the next year. I don't know, but the Orioles have to get him. They have to at this point. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You need to compete for a World Series. You need that top of the line starter, and he is the guy that is going to get you where you want to go, or at least help get you where you want to go. You've gotten everything else taken care of need wise except that. And it's, of course, the one thing you just wait till the last minute to do. I knew this was going to happen again. I thought maybe we would get top of the line starting pitcher out of the way at the winter meetings. That did not happen. And I said, we're gonna drag on this top of the line starting pitcher thing for the whole offseason, or pretty much almost the whole offseason, aren't we? And here we are. Here we are. I'm expecting a move from the Orioles before spring training, but at the same point in time, is it Valdez? Is it a trade? I don't know. Only time will tell there. But really like to hear what you have to think about the Orioles. What's their next move? Is it Valdez? Is it a trade? If so, who do you think they would trade for between guys like Freddie Peralta, Mackenzie Gore, and could someone like, I don't know, a Nick Pivetta be an option, who's been up there in trade talks with the Padres, and I believe has 2 years left on his current contract with them. So yeah, until then, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and I will catch you all in the next one.